Hi, everyone. Nice to see you, Hope. Nice to see you, Samuel. It's been a little while, Samuel. Hope, thank you so much for coming back. Welcome to the Teachers Lounge. Roz will be here in just a moment with our board and getting us set up for our whole conversation today. Last week, or 2 weeks ago, we were really thankful to be talking with Dr. Blacher and Ali Privet about the state of education and different ways that we can tackle issues within education, through working through this issue, through the system, and then going outside of the system. So we really had different points of view, and it's such a great, interesting talk. We love having guests on the Teachers Lounge. But we also like to open it up to overall conversation, just to kind of have free-flowing conversation and talk about different areas of education. And so this week, and Roz will be joining us in just a second. Roz, share the board whenever you are ready so everyone can see. One of the principles that Roz and I work on a lot through our company, The Agile Mind, is bringing agility into the classroom. And so a small piece of doing that is working within Kanban boards and teaching a pull-based way of learning so students can pull information as they come. And so we wanted to kind of demonstrate that during our Teacher Lounge calls so that we can organize our discussion so that we know what's coming up. We can pull into the board. And so as we see right here, we have a kind of basic Kanban board where we have a backlog of things we can talk about today. If you are interested in introducing yourself, if you are interested in having a topic go into our backlog, like things that we can pull to talk about, please let us know in your chat, and then we will add those to the cards, and the cards move across the board. You can see Roz is doing it right now. And we'll pull them through the board so we all know what topic we're on. So even though I know sometimes conversations get messy, things pull at our attention, we can always see what's being discussed and pull them through to the end. And so Roz right now is just showing you how to create a card because Roz is wonderful. So we have our introduction topics in the blue that are overall general. So hi, do you have any news you want to share? Any topics that are on the front of your mind? And the red cards are our focus cards. So if you have been following us on social media, you've been seeing that our focus this week is about the future of education. Roz has really been focused in on the purpose of college. Is college still necessary? What is the purpose of overall education? So we're asking so much of a generation of students to sit in a classroom in schools for so many years, and are we providing them with an education that is useful, and what is the purpose of education now as opposed to what it was before? We wanted to maybe touch upon the ideas of micro-credentials and how they can serve our students, and you can see these topics coming down the line. So yes, it did work, Roz, thank you. So hi Hope, hi Samuel, hi, Jeff. Roz, are you ready to, or anyone else? Hope, Jeff, would you like to pull a card onto discussing so that we can kick off our conversation and offer different voices, tips, and actionable steps towards better systems of education? Hi, Roz. Nice to see you.
Hey, yeah, I'm finally back. My kids went to lunch, so I'm good now.
You're on equal with us right now.
Oh my God.
Switch it up.
Sorry. I'm going to fix that right now. I'm so sorry, guys. Okay.
So thank you for showing that. I had never seen that. So is that an app like that anyone can get? Is it free? I know that's not one of the cards, but that's actionable. So I'm going to go with that as actionable.
No, wait, we can totally go back for a second because I like sharing cool stuff. So hold on, let me click on eHall Pass so I can give a quick thing. Sorry for the sidetrack here. It's actually really cool. So the students actually can log on to into Clever, that kind of overall thing. I don't know who's familiar with that.
Yeah,
but they log in through Clever. It's a platform in Clever, eHall Pass. They actually sign up for the pass, where they can go to their locker, they can go get water, they can go to the bathroom. They have a certain amount of passes they can use per day, and you can either approve it or not. If there are too many students in the hallway at the time, it will not allow them to send it through to me, so it won't even allow me to approve it if there's too many kids in the hallway. And
thank you.
So by the administration, they give them a certain time period. It could be 3 minutes, 5 minutes. They have a certain amount during the day, and that way the admin sees the trend. So if there's a visual kind of line stepper that goes to the bathroom every class, and you can limit it or not give them passes. That's a short version.
Thank you. No, I appreciate that. Thank you.
All right, let me go back to the board.
So hi, Tori. If you're just joining us, I don't know what you heard, but we're just having open conversation today. We wanted to make sure that we get guest speakers like Dr. Bletcher came last week and was wonderful, but also really open up the door to conversation about the topic that we're concentrating on this week. So thank you for joining. And again, just to recap, I don't know when you joined, we're kind of looking at the purpose of education, K-12. Roz has been super focused on college, and just sharing your ideas about, has the education evolved along with the world? And then what we can do from the teacher, parent, student, business owner point of view, because we can't go top down. We're not in those positions. No one's appointing me the Secretary of Education, probably for a very good reason.
I absolutely would, Jessica.
You're the only one, but I like you because of that. But you know, how are we supposed to affect change in more of a grassroots way? Because we need it. So what are your guys' thoughts about this?
So one of the ways that I'm trying to go along, or feel that one of the ways I'm trying to feel that I'm part of impacting change is when there's a shout out from, like there was one from NJPSA, New Jersey Principal Supervisors Association, that I'm a part of, and they were looking for people to be part of a committee. And I know that's unpaid, and I know I would figure out the time, but the purpose of the committee is to give them feedback about how to address the teacher shortage from multiple perspectives. So from an admin perspective, a teacher perspective, college perspective. And I was like, yeah, I'm game. Let me throw my hat in and see if they pick me. And I it's not a one time, like just a meeting. We're meeting multiple times, sharing perspectives, sharing ideas. Should student teaching be paid? How many hours do you really need? What kind of courses? It was like a dream big, dream wide, dive in. And then they are going to invite representatives of different colleges to now come hear some of our suggestions. So for me, that, I know there's some people like, oh, it's your own time, it's a committee. But I was like, I have a voice, and I'm making this choice to meet with these people who are asking. Because if we continue to say, I don't have a voice, or where is my voice, or, they're just going to do what they want anyway. To me, then we're never voicing our voice. We're never making space for our voice if we're just going to, by default, say they're not going to listen anyway. So I am flipping that to say, there was an opportunity. Here's my voice. And I'm going to go to as many of these meetings as I can attend to follow it through.
That's brilliant, Hope. Thank you for sharing that. So that's an excellent way for you to take that action, is to have that voice. I just wanted to, Tori just posted an article that I think pulls a different card into discussing, which is the purpose of education. Tori, I don't have the time to read it while we're here, but can you kind of give me an overview of what that article was?
I've started following the guy who wrote it. He said a lot of high schoolers are starting to kind of call BS on the high school experience. And basically what they're arguing is the last couple of years during the pandemic, they were kind of cranking through their daily work in like 2 hours at home. They were just getting through all of their assignments. And now they're expected to come back and they picked up all these other hobbies. A lot of them picked up jobs. Like they found all these outside activities they enjoy. And then now they're being told, come back to campus and spend 7-8 hours a day on campus. And they're like, doing pretty much the same amount of work, but spread over 7 or 8 hours instead of concentrated into 2. And they're like, this is nuts. This is a waste of my time. There's so many other things I could be doing with these hours. And so, he's opening up a lot of conversation topics about, they're right. I mean, yes, there's some extracurriculars. There's 2 sides to the story. There's a lot of other things that go into high school other than just classes, but there is a lot of wasted time. I mean, my co-founder I had when we started a micro school, he would say, I mean, we actually read articles. Said in a typical school day, a kid gets about an hour of real learning. And then the rest of it is like admin, shuffling between classes, calming the class down. It's just stuff that's not, it's just the noise. And so, how, and that's a huge opportunity cost, right? When if you could give the kids agency, give them assignments, learning objectives, mastery-based, competency-based, they could manage their time and get a whole lot more done than the, shuffle from class to class. You have no control over your time. Right?
And it's interesting, Tori, that you say that because as thinking, what are some of the skills now that we need as adults in this, I don't want to say I want to be optimistic and say post-pandemic. I don't know that we're, but feel like we're there, especially coming off a week of my husband having COVID, is a very different way now that we manage time. And the concept of time, and if you work from home, that time looks different and requires different boundaries, perhaps, than if you're working, 2 days in an office, 2 days out. So our concept, the fluidity of time, it's still something that I know is very different than being in a school, being in a classroom, ding, there's a bell, time, very time bound and very signal bound. Whereas now it's, hey, how are you keeping track of you're having a Zoom, you're having a meeting, what are you doing? So I think acquainting students and adults with how does time look for you? How are you, what's replacing your school bells in your, whether you're in a teacher or you're, in an office or work from home office, and how does that feel? And what's your personal accountability is something that that was a huge change, a huge shift for the students and the parents when it was suddenly live and work from home, because that structure was not necessarily there.
It was. So I just posted an article from McKinsey about the top skills for the next decade. And it's about time management. It's about adaptability. Can you shift? Can you build connections outside of the dominant area? So can you build those smaller connections between dominant areas and make connections that otherwise would be ignored? And I was also reading yesterday, Roz and I just went to a homeschooling micro school event. And so I was reading up on homeschooling, and one of the articles I was reading was that you can't just expect kids to know how to balance their time. They have to be taught how to balance their time. And Roz and I are huge proponents of pull-based learning, meaning that students have more agency and they learn how to pull at their own rate. And so they don't have that time slag that Tari is talking about. They can manage themselves in their adult life, like Hope was just talking about. But you really do need to scaffold that and teach that skill of how do I get started? How do I fake out my procrastination? How do I decide, what is going on? Oh, look, I love the confetti on Kanban Sun. How do we manage all those different things so that we can be successful adults in this different time? Because the world has just dramatically shifted, where the majority of us are working from home at this point, or the majority will. And we need to develop those skills in K-12 education. So being that we're in this kind of rigid way, how do we make some changes that bring in pull-based learning so kids are learning those skills, and maybe bring that purpose of education back so that you're enriching in those deeper skills that directly connect to a future without being able to tear down the system or, blow it apart. Because again, only Tori is going to let me be the Secretary of Education, and that's not enough votes.
Well, Roz, I think would back me on it.
Yeah.
I have two. I want to build on something Jessica said and build on something Hope said on the McKinsey. It's so awesome that you brought up a McKinsey report, because this one, I hope it's going to blur it. But I've been obsessed with it for the last week. It's called Defining the Skills Citizens Will Need in the Future World of Work. They have
quads.
What's that?
It's the quads. The four.
Yeah, it's got 4 different sections. One's called cognitive skills, interpersonal skills, self-leadership, and digital skills. And they have 53 different, they call them deltas instead of skills, distinct elements of talent and different skill groups. Anyway, I included the link there. I think it's very similar to the one you posted, but it's got these sort of detailed skills. And I've been really kind of deep diving into that. And I think it's a great framework, although it's a little bit McKinsey centric. A lot of it's like the kind of work they do around like asking good questions, structured problem solving, but still it's a good skill set. And the reason they call them deltas is because a lot of it's attitude, like courage and risk taking, having energy, passion, and optimism. Like, you know, that's less of a skill and more of an attitude. So I thought that is great. I highly recommend that link and download. They usually have a PDF. You download the PDF, you can print it off, and trying to integrate those skills into your classes, developing those skills. What Hope was saying about time management, my big revelation the last couple of weeks, I'm a big fan of the Atkins Academy micro school model, to figure out how to bring the best elements of that over to traditional schools. My initial thought on that a couple of years ago when I started Be Someone was it's the project-based learning. It's these amazing 6-week projects that immerse the teams. And I still think that that's really powerful. But now I'm kind of rethinking it and saying, really what's powerful about their model is student agency, how much they get away from the teacher micromanages the students. And it's obviously totally matches up with what you guys do with agile projects. You know, you put it on the kids to like set their goals for the week and track their goals and then hold accountability at the end of the week for what they did and managing their time. And just, it's a horrible transition when you bring in a new kid and they're so used to being just told, here's exactly your assignments, here's exactly when they're due, and I'm going to stay on top of you until they're all done. And then you say, no, we're not doing any of that. Like, you know, now you got to still put in some guidelines. You got to coach them. There's a lot. It's a hard transition. But once they've been through that 1 or 2 month transition, it's a transformation. I mean, the kid just gets into this rhythm of like, yeah, I got to set some goals for the week. I got to figure out what I'm interested in learning. I got, you know, the teachers have set some goals for me. I got to get those integrated. I've got some deadlines. The Summit educational model out in California, charter school, they do the same kind of thing. They have software to manage like all these objectives, and you know, you've got to get through certain milestones through the semester, but the kids can manage their time and tasks. That is what I think is powerful. Just cultivating that mindset of I've got to take the initiative to figure out what I'm going to do with my time, where I'm going to put it, what I'm going to invest in, what I'm going to learn. Like that's a lifelong skill, right? That'll pay off for you forever, right? If you can constantly be thinking about where do I need to be investing my time for the best payoff, instead of just I'm this passive person that's micromanaged. And then it turns into a game, right? School, the game of school. How do I do the minimum amount of work and get the grades I want? And it's not anything about learning or objectives or goals. It's just, you know, playing the game. And that's a horrible mindset. And I think a lot of kids fall into that. A lot of kids fall into that. College is a little bit better. That's where usually you're kind of throwing kids in the deep end. Now you got to manage your classes and manage. But even a lot of colleges, they give them a very fixed route. Like you will take these classes, you will go down this path. And so they fall into the same passive sort of mindset, and they never develop that sort of agency and self-direction.
Just to kind of add on to that, Corey, I can tell you as someone who engages with Fortune 500s and government sector, it's right around this time of year, the last month or so, that the new college hires have all been joining their companies. And the first thing they do is they have to send them to training because they do not know how to, well beyond time management, right? That's just a small little aspect of all the things that students who have now gone through 16 years of our education system cannot do. How do we collaborate with other people?
Right.
How do we write an email? Right? How do we effectively communicate an idea? How do we show it? All these things have not been exposed, the students have not been exposed to. And, you know, it explains why you have, you know, teachers like Jessica and Rosalind who are flipping the script. And they're taking things from industry. They're bringing them into their classroom because what industry, what the job sector is really becoming acutely aware of is that in order to be successful, forget about the pandemic, in a complex and adaptive world, the digital economy, it is full force. Everything is going to be different every single day. And if you cannot adapt to it because you are of a traditional mindset, then you are going to go the way of the buggy whip manufacturer.
100%. And you got to learn how to take the initiative. You can't just wait for your boss to give you specific, detailed assignments with exact due dates. Like, you have to step up and say, here's the problems I see going on this team in this department. Here's how I'm going to structure how to problem solve them. Here's who I'm going to talk to get things done and get things changed and make stuff happen. Like, taking the initiative. And that's something we totally do not teach kids how to do, how to take the initiative.
Well, it's actually, Tori, it's a little bit worse than that, because senior executives are paying millions of dollars a year to coaches like myself to teach them how to get better at time management. And the way we teach them is, hey, you must lead by intent. Micromanagement, it's gone. You are not telling everybody what to do. You're saying, hey, we're trying to get here in 2 years. You know your job. You know what we are as an organization. Now, how are you going to contribute with your team to get us there? Oh, yeah, and you must define your own goals and objectives to get there. We're not even going to give you that. We're going to give you a vision and a mission.
It would be so cool to see classes run that same way, sort of lay out some learning objectives at the beginning of the year and say, okay, guys, how are we going to structure that so that we get through these learning and skill building objectives? I think it's not just content. It's like, we want to build some, and you interact with them. That would be a really interesting way to run a class. Like that first week, okay, what kind of skills do you guys want to develop? Maybe we want to learn some speaking skills, some writing skills, all right, let's, and here's some learning objectives. Let's lay out and you give them some options, right? But because you can't just leave it wide open. I know I've heard from the founders of Acton, they do this constitutional convention kind of thing the first week of the school year where the kids put together a charter for how they're going to, the goals and values of the school. And he said, if you leave it wide open, they kind of flounder. It's just, you can't expect a bunch of, 7th graders to be the founding fathers. But if you give them some guidelines, here's some options, here's some possibilities, here's what last year wrote, that gets them started. And then they have very active debates and discussions and put together a really good document.
Yeah, and it actually prepares them for what work life is going to be like. Because at the end of the day, hey, you're going to show up at your job and, hey, there's going to be some due dates. We didn't set them. The government set them. Taxes have to be filed by this day, right? These things have to be done by a certain time. And so how do you adapt within it? We actually have a cohort of 3 college professors out of Tunghai University in Taiwan who are actually running their classes that way, the way you described, Tori. One of them teaches computer science. One of them teaches, I think it's just, general work preparedness. And then the third one teaches clinical sociology or psychology. I don't know. But, that's the approach that they're bringing into their classroom. It's like, hey, here are the guide rails, right? The midterm is here. The end of the semester is here. These are the goals that have been provided to us by, the educational ministry. Now, we can get there any way we want. Right. How would you like to get there? And so now they're finding for themselves that the students are not 100%, right? You have students who, hey, I've been doing school a certain way. I'm just going to wait for the teacher to tell me what to do. But a good percentage of the students are actively taking that agency and running it.
And so I just want to add to this before we move on. I see, Hope, that you want to talk, that we're not just talking anecdotally, because it's very easy to say well, you're just a couple of teachers that notice. We actually pulled up these statistics about college preparedness, that public education in America spends over $15,000 per child. And yet after they emerge from 4 to 6 years of college, the workforce spends about $359 billion globally retraining those kids how to get into school. So you're spending that money, $15,000 every single year for an education for students. And then the companies then spend $359 billion globally to retrain them. So what were you doing? Like, could you think of a better way to spend that $359 billion? I can.
I will say a big part of the problem I've seen with colleges is that all professors orient all classes towards, I am assuming you eventually want to be a PhD professor in this topic. Therefore, you want to deep dive academically, you want to write, dissertation level papers. And of course, 95, 98% of kids are not on that track, right? They're trying to learn a broad set of skills, be exposed to a broad set of information. But that is not the way the professors orient the classes, because they just assume you're on this track that's not realistic. And that flows all the way down to high school. I mean, my understanding is that the whole basic high school curriculum got shaped by Harvard, because they're like, well, this is what we want our undergrads to have, like some physics, some chemistry, some advanced biology, some calculus. And you're like, that became the standard for the entire 100% of all students going through high school. And you're like, why are we pushing some of these more calculus? I mean, I did great in calculus, but I think it's like 1% of the population needs to understand calculus.
Yeah, calculus sucks. Excuse my language. Like, yeah. I went all the way up to calculus 2, and I don't even remember what it was. It was torture. So
I need to share an article that was in the Atlantic that was like their #1 story for like a week straight by anyway, it's calling into question algebra, like how much we should be pushing algebra even at the high school level, versus a lot of other things. Again, it's opportunity cost. It's not that algebra is irrelevant. It's that, is that the most relevant thing you could be doing with this 1,000 hours that kids are going to spend through high school learning math?
And well, I wonder. Oh, sorry. No, and I think the stress associated with it, like basic algebra about how to fill in the blank. Okay, I have this many pieces of this. How many do I need to be able to fill to feed 4 people? That kind of stuff makes sense. But where you have literally every letter of the alphabet and the math problem, you don't need that unless you're working for NASA. So there should be some kind of break between, okay, I need to be able to do these simple kind of math skills, and depending on the problem that I'm trying to solve. If I'm not trying to get to Jupiter, I don't necessarily need to know all of that stuff. But basic stuff, yes. What happens if my phone breaks down? I am the first one to pull my calculator out. But if I do something really quick and my phone's in another room, my battery died. Those kind of basic things. No problem there. And I think that's an important distinction to make and something to think about.
I once read a great line. It's like requiring kids to learn all the parts of grammar so that they can be writers. Can you guys hear me okay? I think I'm getting some echo. There, that fixed it. So it was saying we're expecting kids to know grammar and all the parts of speech so that they can be writers is about the same as expecting somebody to know all the parts of an internal combustion engine so they can be a driver. Like, we don't make people memorize all the parts of a car and an engine so that they can drive. But anyway, there's a lot of things we spend, and I'm not saying grammar's irrelevant, but we might be spending overemphasizing a lot of. Y'all remember doing sentence diagrams? Oh my God. Has that been a valuable skill in your life? I understand you need to know what a noun versus a verb versus an adjective is, but it doesn't go too much deeper than that. And Acton, I remember, talking, and Acton does use No Red Ink for learning some grammar, but they said it's like we just get the kids to write every week and get feedback on it, and voila, after a few years you get to be a really good writer because you're constantly writing and constantly getting feedback on it. And you instantly, he said, just by naturally you learn grammar, you learn punctuation, you learn spelling because people constantly are giving you feedback, and you're reading other writers who are better than you and other students. So because you're giving feedback to them, and so you're like, oh, that's how that punctuation works. Oh, that's how that spelling works. And it's just sheer repetition that makes you a good writer. And
the collaborative piece too, because when you're in your own head, yeah, my stuff sounds great, but oh my gosh, look at theirs. You know what I mean? Hope, did you have something to add to?
So it's interesting to hear what you're all saying, because I am hearing my educational background, having gone through the traditional route, 4-year college, teacher certs. But early on, I was encouraged to get multiple certifications so that I would be able to be hireable if one department folded. And I think what that did for me, looking at it now, which at the time thought it was like, oh, another cert, was make me be not just marketable, but flexible to look at things from different perspectives. Hopping up now to when I do professional development, people have said to me like, well, how do you know there are so many options? Like, I did a read aloud on Monday. I was at a school district and I did the little old lady who wasn't afraid of anything. And I'm like, okay, so other than reading this aloud as a demonstration of English and modeling English for your students, how else could you use this book? Mm-hmm. And they looked at me like I wasn't like becoming Medusa. I was like, there's more to this than a read aloud. And I was like, what cultural, embeddedness is in this book? What vocabulary could you do? Sequencing, math. And then it was like, oh, like, all right, now let's just blurt them out. I was like, the book is more than the read aloud itself. You have to be open to all of those possibilities and then pick from it. And I said, you're not going to do all of these. You're going to pick and choose, which is very different than that lockstep approach. So unknowingly, I've been the one to kind of live outside of that lockstep approach. And sometimes it's been well received and sometimes not, but I see it in my own kids who there was a new high school opening up and I opted to send my daughter there at the high school for performing arts. And every year it was, do you want to stay or do you want to go back? Because you had to decide at the beginning of the year. After your freshman year, it was the end of the year. And I saw how different it was from the high school I was teaching in at the time, or I was an administrator in, and like my own experience. And I would like slowly bring ideas of what I thought were like the golden nuggets of her brand new high school, brand new experience and say, hey, like for the 100th day of school, the art teacher, the phys ed teacher, and the science teacher are going to do something together. And those directors were like, what are you talking about? I was like, why is it like the 100th day of school is only in math? Like, that's not a thing. Or in ELA, you read 100 books. There's so, like, just take the concept, let it breathe life off the page and ask the kids, like, what does 100 mean to you? And then it's a lot of dialogue with the students. And that whole, we can learn together. I respect my students who want to teach me something and aren't afraid to call me out and I make a mistake. And there were times I would make a mistake on purpose, just because I was like, I knew it. And they had so much fun calling me out. But then when it was really something, there was that whole give and take of, we'll learn from the mistakes. As long as it didn't hurt, like it wasn't personal, like hurting their body. And it's the same thing with asking students, is that the correct answer? And their immediate response is like, no, like, is it wrong? Did I not? Because immediately if someone questions you, then your answer is not right. And my daughter she's 28 and she's struggling with what Tori and Jeff said, and she's a new position and a director, and there is someone there, and she's like, Mom, he asked me to help him frame out his week. He's been in this job for like 3 years. What did he do like 3 months ago before I came? No wonder. And she's like, no wonder he was ineffective and didn't get the position. And she's like, and he's older than me, and he's asking me, who now he reports to me, like, how do I frame? She's like, did you teach me to frame out my week? And I wanted to say to her, like, yeah, hon, remember when we used to take the calendar and mark? And I just said to her, sweetheart, you have a calendar? You have a planner? She's like, of course I do. Like, of course I do. We have a planner. We put things in it. And I'm like, because I scaffolded you to have that. And we forget. And I've used Summit. And that is one of the challenges for that self-directed learning is, are you ready for your check-in? How do you know that you're ready? Did you do and it's very interesting. Like, I keep a paper planner. I have tried to use an online planner. I don't want to say it's an epic fail, it just doesn't fit my style. Thank you, Ross. And that is just fits me and my style. But I think that's, again, you teach that time management, and it's not telling you what to do with your time. It's also your choices. So for some people, it's like time management, you're going to tell me what to do. Like, no. Let's just take this as a time. And where are you going to plot the things that need to be done? And like, here's when my taxes are due.
Yep, it's prioritizing.
On April 14th, am I panicking that I'm getting to the post office at midnight with everybody else and praying for an extent? But, and the last thing I just want to pipe in that is I've worked with 2 districts now on calendaring and taking your school calendar and putting in it, what are the deadlines and the due dates and the testings and the assessments that are like
Fixed.
beyond a shadow of a doubt, short of a pandemic. These are the stick to dates, and let people know those ahead of time. Do not let the staff know a week ahead of time that the next week is blocked out for testing and then there's no homework, no assignments. If you know them as an administrator and they're not secret, let the staff know. And then you take that planner and you block them out. And they're like, well, like, we just never thought of doing that before. The admin, I said, you as admins know. Yeah. But it's the teachers who are with the kids that need to know that that's coming down the pike. And why can't you tell them now?
Yeah, don't plan a test for that day.
Bigger than,
but that's exactly it. And we took their calendar and we just blotted and put it, and the teachers were like, now we can see it. And the admins didn't even realize all the overlaps.
And guys, I'm so sorry. I have to go because my kids are back in class and I'm not. But
okay.
This is the fun stuff. Thank you guys so much. Please stay with Jess so she can break this down. And I think because a serious part of the conversation is about college as well. We know what's wrong with K-12, but I think there's a bigger conversation to have about college. So don't talk about that while I'm not here because I have a lot of opinions about that. If you do, I'm going to bring it up again next week anyway. So,
are we meeting next week or is it every 2 weeks now?
No, 2 weeks. 2 weeks.
2 weeks. Okay, got it. Just want to make
sure.
All
right. So Jessica, I'm still going to share. I'm going to put myself on mute and I can still work the board if you guys need me to do that. Okay. All right.
I need to learn about Kanban. I think I do it and didn't know that that's what it was called. I just do it. I just do it with Post-it notes. So I didn't know that that was a thing.
I'll take you on a tour, Hope. This is mine that it needs to be refilled, but this is for me and my kid. And so we just did it on the wall. Like, that's my littlest. He's learning his alphabet. These pink ones, I need to refill my backlog, clearly.
I didn't know that's what it was called.
Yeah, so this is, and it's what, so when Roz and I talk about pull-based systems, this is what it is, because you put everything you need to do in your backlog. So this is how I work it. Everything needs to do in my backlog on Monday, and then I pull it due to doing and done. And that way, first of all, it stops procrastination, because like you can never sit there and be like, oh, I don't have time, because you're like staring at that Post-its that are like, you know you have time, just do it. And then as you pull them across, there's this satisfaction. So for kids, there's opportunity for movement. There's opportunity for tactile response. You get that surge of like dopamine. I don't know if it's serotonin or dopamine.
The muscle memory. I did this.
Like they're like, yay, And so like even in Kanban zone, like you just saw with Roz, it sets off confetti. So you really feel good about yourself. And that's, Roz and I try to use that in the classroom because that's a business-ready skill. Like Kanban is a skill that major corporations use when planning their projects. Administrators can use that when planning their curriculum. Like it is so multifaceted, and it's a skill you could put on your resume. So like
I didn't know. So I'll show you. I have my laptop, so sorry, I'm probably not. So like I'm doing that in my planner.
Oh, there you go.
I didn't know it had like an official name. This is the Hope method, and my kids are like, do that on the Google Calendar. I'm like, no, I need to. No, it's not happening for me in the Google. But when she showed that Kanban zone, I'm like, oh my God, that makes more sense to me than on the calendar. But I have to. I'm not familiar. I think there are a lot of things in education that we just do that we don't know it has another name.
One of the things I love about the Summit model is because they thought of that same agency problem, and they built in. I think the way I read it was this sort of 4-step model they wanted to inculcate in the kids: planning, implementing, demonstrating, and then reflecting, and constantly doing that over and over.
Yeah, I've used Summit. I was at a school where we adopted Summit. I went out to California and yeah,
I went out to California and did the training. I've never actually implemented it in a classroom, but I went to the training and I was just amazed with how much thought went into it. But if you can just build that habit into students of like, okay, I got to make some plans, and then I got to execute on them, and then demonstrate is like demonstrate your learning. So they have an exhibition or they have something that shows you can prove what you did. And then you reflect on it. What did I like? What did I not like? What do I need to do next? What should I change? And then you do the cycle over again. Like that's a useful life skill in general, like for everything. I mean,
I know Ross said not to talk about college, but in a college prep program, I'm just going to put this in here because I was an adjunct at one of, and I was teaching teacher. We don't look at it. It has to become that your lesson, when you complete the lesson, it's not just done. Like that lesson, and I don't want to use spiral because some people think like spirals out of control. That's not where it goes. That lesson then scaffolds to another, almost like a slinky. It goes back and forth. And rather than
it's not spiraling, it cycles like a tornado. Like, so that old information gets picked up and constantly rewoven. So it's building a larger schema. So for like teachers, it's the schema is that you're pulling things from the past and constantly whipping it around to the new. And a lot of learning doesn't do that. So you finish the unit, you dump out your head in a test, and then you burn all those papers and you move on. You need to like constantly be aware of interweaving those things so that students understand it's purposeful. Like, why did I learn that? Because you're still learning it in June.
Right. But I think that's something that could happen in the college is when you sit with and you lay out things like, how are these connected? Like, why I need this class because this learning is going to help, like where is it going? Like a visual, like a web, a visual thesaurus software, something. Otherwise they just all stay in their box and we slowly forget them or quickly forget them.
Yeah, I agree. And I think just going back to what you said just slightly earlier, Hope, was that we as teachers do all these things and we don't know the words for them. But because we have studied ways of intrinsic learning, and then a lot of times we go in the classroom and we're told by powers that be to not teach towards intrinsic learning. You're forgetting human nature when you're sitting these kids in rows and they're taking notes and they're not asking questions. We're asked to do the opposite of what real learning is. So like one of the reasons that Roz and I we were so attracted to Agile and we've become such advocates for it is because it really follows human nature in the organic systems of learning, that you pull your information to yourself as you need it. You build your schema, you develop agency. All of those things are things that we as human beings inherently do since the moment we're born until we hit a classroom. So we just need to bring that into the classroom. And our last 10 minutes of this discussion, you guys are brilliant. I so love talking to you. I wish I could talk to you all day. But I kind of want to just have some actionable steps for teachers, college professors, parents, students themselves. What are some things that they could do if they're in this system that is not going right now? Hope you do great things within your system. Roz and I go and attack from the bottom up. Tori helps in all different kinds of ways. So how can we bring this in so that it's actionable? It's not just this like pie in the sky. Like when I get to redo colleges, it'll be like this. What can average people do to bring these intrinsic pull-based learning, having a voice in your own education? What do you guys think?
I think you can structure that 4-cycle model, that summit model of agency into any class, and you can inculcate that and get the kids thinking in terms of. I think the mentality that needs to be conveyed is you're trying to build a set of skills. Now we have a set of learning objectives and content, but as part of that, you can build your skills, whether it's presentation skills or writing skills or reading skills, or like you want to get better at these things. So you see this content rather as like, why am I learning about this battle? It's like, well, you're so you can write a paper that will develop your ability to do analytical writing, right? Like, and that's the skill you're trying to build is analytical writing, not that you care that much about that particular battle or war or whatever happened, right? And then I think kids would get more excited about the learning, like, and start thinking in this mentality of like, I've got a set of skills I want to build, and school is giving me some hooks for things I can do to help build those skills. But then there's going to be gaps too. Like I really want to learn about whatever it is. I may have to set some time outside of school to get in a cycle of set some goals, implement them, reflect. Did I enjoy learning about that? Did it help me build some skills? If you can just get them in that mentality of, rather than just like, I'm totally passive, I'm just here to absorb whatever school makes me do, like start making real goals for yourself, what you want to be, who you want to be, skills you want to have, and then figure out, okay, I'm learning that in English, I'm getting that in history, I'm getting that in math class. but I'm not getting this, this, and this. So I need to set up some time on the weekends or after school to start doing that. Or even, get to, I don't know, you could even start going to the teacher and saying, hey, one of my objectives is, this is something they did at co-learning community. I knew Workspace Education Connecticut. They called it 21 CI. But the most interesting thing was they gave the kids a list of potential skills and said, pick 2 or 3 that you're most interested in, and let's help you practice those part of this class. So like, I want to get better at public speaking. You're like, all right, well then as part of this project, we're going to have you do some public speaking and give you some scaffolding and help you so that you hit your learning goal of being a better public speaker by the end of the class. Now, other kids may have no interest in being public speakers, but they want to, or having that skill, but they want to read a whole lot, or they want to do a team project. They enjoy doing team stuff. Like, you're like, all right, well, let's set you up with a team project. Then they feel like they have more agency. They're the ones directing where they want to go. Like, I want to develop these talents, these skills. If you can just inculcate that mentality, and I think any teacher can do that in any class with any content, regardless of what they're sort of forced to do, they can try to develop that sort of self-development, self-reflection, goal-setting mentality. Need a better self-direction, need a good label for it. But
I think the other thing, listening,
it's agile.
Agile, there you go.
I'm able to understand what you're saying because I'm an educator. I think for the parents, the community, the teachers, we need a common language, because then it becomes, you either sound like the expert highfalutin and the people become intimidated by you. So if we are truly going to sit around a table, sit around a Zoom, sit around whatever, we have to have a common language to understand each other. And that, I am finding, is becoming more and more with these, like harder and harder. And I'm experiencing this on LinkedIn. Like, I see people in all different things, my feed, and someone's like, well, then you're not focused enough. Like, well, you're not focused enough because you need to look. And I'm like, no, I don't want to do like, okay, I hear what you're saying, that my feed should just be, if I want to be an educational consultant, I have to have it filled with educators or people who are going to hire me for that. But I find a richness in hearing other voices. But that is an aside. I think if you're getting people around a table, we have to have some kind of basic common language. And I see this a lot in education when we have IEP meetings, the individualized education plan. And these parents come in and they're either like, you literally can see that they're scared, or it's like, we need to give them a dictionary to understand. And that's something that has to happen either before or during as we're having that conversation. Who's ever at the table has to be very cognizant of making it understandable, that speaking jargon filled is not going to help the cooperation or the collaboration at all. It'll just cut it. The wall will come up, whether it's transparent or visible, and then you don't get the collaboration that you may be seeking. And I think there is some of that weightiness of expertise that we need to just knock away at and say, that may fill you in other areas, but that's not going to help this conversation.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And like Tori hears me say this all the time, is that society, like education, it affects all members of society. So it affects us directly as teachers or people that are working with education. It affects us as parents. It affects us as grandparents, as uncles, as aunts. It affects us as business leaders because we're hiring people that are unprepared for the work that we're trying to do. It affects foreign policy. Like, it affects all levels of society. So we're all in this together. And instead of fighting with each other or arguing or using, our alphabets to sound really interesting, we need to have that. You're right. We need to have that common language. And really maybe just wrapping up what Tori said too, like bringing in that idea, and Roz and I have done it, any unit, no matter what it is, can be turned into poll-based learning. Anything can have choices added to it. Just because it's presented on a piece of paper in a PDF to you as a teacher doesn't mean that it can't have choice in it, or there can't be agency involved in it. And it sounds like we're asking teachers to do a lot, and they're already overstressed, and we understand that, but it actually relieves a lot of stress when your kids are happy and when your kids are self-motivated. And so it's kind of like I found when I'm building it, it's worth the effort on the front end to enjoy the whole length of the journey. So I would rather put in a lot of time building a unit so that it's choice and pull based, and then kind of like hang out with my kids for the whole 6 weeks while they do the project. And then I just sit there and like, I talk to them, I facilitate, I ask questions, but I'm not stressed out and losing my mind. So, you know, I just
voice
think
and choice. That's the term I've heard them use on the Getting Smart blog. Voice and choice, giving kids more voice and choice. It's less highfalutin and agency. A lot of parents won't know what you mean when you say agency, but you say voice and choice, they kind of like, oh, that's kind of interesting. I mean, you still got to explain it, but yes. And you know what? You wouldn't need that software that Roz was demonstrating earlier about bathroom pass management. If kids love being in the class and love engaging on what they're doing, then they won't be trying to gameplay going to the bathroom or get drinks of water all the time. Goodness gracious.
or you know, you automatically know it. Your kids are doing work on a Kanban board. You can see whether the work's being pulled or not. So you don't need a thing to monitor them and make it feel like kids resent being feel like they're not trusted. If it's just on a board and you're pulling the work, I can see if you're doing it or not. I don't need to come down on you like the warden. I can have a great and relationship with you.
I have a question. Did the three of you work at the same online school or no? Like, are you and Roz working at an online school that
No,
you're?
I just joined. I'm joining the same as you. We're Jessica
Okay.
and Roz. Jessica and Roz.
Roz and I own the Agile Mind together. We worked together previously, and right now we teach. I teach seniors, and I teach an undergraduate political science course. So I just try to like test this in all different areas to make sure that when I'm talking to you, I'm not just making it up. So I find opportunities to test what I say and refine and reflect and make sure that the advice that I'm giving to other teachers and administrators is sound because it's been tried in lots of different areas. So Roz and I are a team, and Tori likes to come and hang out with us. And so we hope you continue to come and like to hang out with us too, because we really enjoy hearing from you guys. It's so nice to have different voices, and we're actively looking to bring more people into this community. Now we're taping it so it can be listened to later because we realize that teachers have a hard time getting out. But we're just looking to try to do something grassroots, something easy, something that concerned parents that are looking for answers can get some answers to, something that teachers that are stressed out and looking to jump out of industry can find some answers to. Just some way to make life a little bit easier for all of us, because again, education really affects all of us. So, you know, we just want to make it better. We have little kids, you know, we need those kids to have a good education so that they know how to pull their own work and they know how to schedule their own work. And my kids have a Kanban board, and so do Roz's. But, you know, it's not just about our kids, it's about society. It's about all of us. So that's really what we're kind of doing.
If you like this conversation and you want to be a part of the next one on October 26th, join us in the Teachers Lounge.